All right, so let's start.
Sure. Give me one.
Cool. So yeah, thanks for coming, guys.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks for coming, Kshitij. Thank you for giving time for this whole designathon thing. So if you guys don't know who Kshitij is, he's currently working at Microsoft. He has previously worked at FamPay as well, as intern at FamPay, and he's also taken two cohort-based courses on Bluelearn's platform on designing as well. So yeah, welcome, Kshitij, and thank you for doing this. Over to you.
Yeah. So hi everyone. I'll quickly just add on a few things just so for those who might have missed out. So I'm actually from IIIT Delhi, a senior at IIIT Delhi. I'm studying computer science and design. And as Viraj already mentioned, I've interned at Microsoft FamPay and CocaCola previously. And I was also selected for digital product design school at Munich for this year. And okay, so today I'll be talking about UX design and specifically design process, like what it means, how it works. So this is a part of the UI and UX course I run on with Bluelearn. So I'll only be talking about the design process, but you can obviously go ahead and know more about the laws of UX and FigJam on your own, and you can explore it throughout the hackathon. So any questions just before I begin? Oh, is my voice distorted? Is it better? Viraj, could you just confirm once?
For me, it is clear. Maybe Ashwin, you can
Okay.
check your internet or something.
Okay, cool. Okay. Okay, I'll start then. So design process, for those who are familiar with design would know is a 5-step process. For those who don't know, it's sort of a process which is there. It's like a default option for designers. So whenever you start solving a problem, whenever you start designing, you go through this process. And even though I've laid it out linearly, where there are 5 steps, you start with empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. But if you're actually going out into the real world, it won't be so linearly placed. Like you'll probably start with one phase, and you'll go to the next phase, and probably come back and skip or two, and then there's a lot of back and forth. So the design itself that you're designing, it's an iterative process, and that's an important term. And you should always remember that whenever you're designing, don't try and follow that linear path, and it's okay if you deviate and come back and forth. So I'll quickly go in each of these phases that in the problem statement that you pick in this hackathon as well. Just go through these phases and try and understand the design process and how you're supposed to solve a problem. And I'll quickly tell you why you're supposed to follow that design process. Whenever you're designing or solving a problem, the first thing to keep in mind is that you're supposed to design the right thing. And what that means is that you need to find the right problem to solve instead of just going ahead with the problem solving it and focusing on the execution part. Just beforehand, before you focus on the execution part, before you focus on doing that thing right, you're supposed to focus on the right thing. So that's what the design process is. It's about finding the right problem to solve and solving that in the right manner. So step one is empathize. And empathize, just as the word suggests, it means that you're trying to understand the users. You're trying to familiarize yourself with their problems. So there are few steps involved, like few phases that you could go towards whenever you're trying to empathize with your audience, with the users. And it's secondary research, primary research, and you're supposed to categorize the data. It might sound a little complex, but trust me, it's not. It's very simple. Secondary research is essentially what you're doing, understanding the problem space. So let's say you have something in mind that this is the problem space I want to work in. That's the solution I want to find towards. You just want to understand how big is that problem? What do other people have to say about it? So all that comes under secondary research. Then primary research is, okay, now you've gathered all the data that, okay, this is how people do it. This is how the society thinks. This is how people function. You dive in deeper to and communicate with people individually and try and understand their pain point. Either will it be one-on-one sessions or by taking out a questionnaire. And then once you've gathered all this data, you're just categorizing that data. So that's the empathize step. And the most important thing to remember when you're taking interviews or when you're going into this research part trying to empathize is that you're supposed to let go of your ego and leave your bias at the door. And what this means is that you don't go in and talk to people and try and force them into specific answers that this is what they should be answering. If they're not answering, try and understand why they're not answering. So you need to be open and be open to different perspectives that you look at. That's the point of the research, and that's what will help you create a better solution. So just keep that in mind. And I'll give you an example, an important example. So when you're taking interviews, it's quite possible that some users will say something, but in fact, they don't actually mean that. And how that works is, so Sony was not recently, it's been a long time ago, but they were launching a boombox. And there were two types of boomboxes that they wanted to try out. So one was yellow and another was black. And so they brought in a few people, they brought in like 20, let's say 15, 20 people, and they just tried to understand their point of view. And during the presentation, everyone said the yellow was the color that most of them wanted. It was a cute color, it resonated, it had good vibes, and all that color psychology that you want to apply, that whatever the color yellow means, etc. So at the end of the process, like at the end of the research interview part, it was very clear that yellow boombox was the thing that everyone wanted, and that's what they'd be going forward with. Now, at the end of the session, it's not a task. They just laid out for for everyone who came. At the opposite end of the room, they laid out the boom boxes. On one side was yellow, on the other side was all black. And everyone started just taking one and leaving the room. And by the end of the session, they noticed that all the yellows were perfectly in place and all the blacks were missing. Like most people had taken blacks. And that's what confused them, that why is it that people have taken black, even though most of them said yellow was the cutest one, yellow was the perfect one. So that's what I mean. People say something else, but they do something differently. So that's, as when you're researching, when you're talking to people, just look into that aspect as well. Are people doing the thing that they're saying? So don't pressurize them into saying something. Just try and observe as well. While talking, try and observe what they do. So that's the research part. And this is an example from my case study that I had submitted at a Microsoft Design Challenge. And so when I went over doing my secondary research, I looked at different articles, different Twitter posts, and every place where I could get anything related to the the problem space was Delhi Metro. So anything where I could find information about Delhi Metro. And I'll tell you where all you can find these information. So there are six places where you can get your secondary research information from. So whenever you start designing and focus on a problem, you can go to community forums, you can go on Discord channels and talk to people, because these places is where people are already active and they'll probably answer your questions. So you can just strike a good conversation, just talk to them naturally and try and understand their problem, what their point of view and perspective is. A good place where, I'm not sure how many people mention this, but a good place where I usually go to find the research that I want is Play Store. So let's say I'm designing an application and there are few competitors that already exist. So I'll just go on that application on the App Store or the Play Store and just go through their comments. Like, what have people posted? Look at the 1 stars. What's that people are complaining about? And that's also where you get your solution from, the problem from, and that's where you can design a solution. You can take polls on social media. I usually do this, that I just post quick casual polls on Instagram. So it's not like people have to take out their time to do it. It's just whenever they're scrolling, they'll just quickly post on the poll, and it works. And I get some of the insights from there as well. And you can obviously go through multiple articles and research papers around the net or around the internet. And competitive analysis is a term which also comes under secondary research. And it's essentially that you're going through, so the solution that you're designing, you're looking at the competitors that already exist and what all do they do, and looking at their functionalities and so on. Just comparing them with your ideal scenario, what you want to build. And this is just an example of how you can present your competitive analysis. It's not it's not the right answer, the wrong answer. It's just a more organized way of representing it. It's totally up to you how you want to do it. If you find more good examples on the internet, it's completely up to you. But what I've done is, let's say I had this application and these were the 3 competitors, Canary Care, MindMate, and GrabPack. And I've just listed on all the features and accordingly just noted on what features are present in each application and which are not. And what would my application have these features or not. Now, primary research, so that's the secondary research where you're just analyzing the existing data or just understanding the scenario. Primary data is when you're interacting with your audience. And there are 2 types of primary data, which is quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative is obviously the survey that you take, you get statistic results that, okay, these are the question you created, these are the results, and this is from what I infer from there. A good thing to remember is that the question that you're designing is very important. Don't try and make your questions very leading, and I'll actually come to that. Okay. So whenever you're making a quantitative form or a questionnaire, try and divide that into certain sections that you want to answer. So in my case, I wanted to understand the transportation system during COVID and after COVID, especially for Delhi Metro. So what I had done was I started the questionnaire with understanding the user background, like who are these people, what's their income, how do they work, and so on. Then I went on to understanding the general behavior. Then I wanted to understand general behavior in transportation, like before COVID, how did they transport? Then during COVID, how did they transport? And then I dived down into the Delhi Metro part, since that was my problem space. So that's how you can structure have sections in your questionnaire and have questions accordingly in each section. There are three types of questionnaires that you can create. Sort of primary research that you can conduct, the interviews that you take, structured, semi-structured, and structured. So I'll quickly go over them because I don't want to bundle you with too much information. So for this hackathon, I would recommend that you go ahead with semi-structured interviews, which is essentially that you have certain set of questions and you have a certain layout that these are the questions that you will ask. But when you're talking to people, you might go off-road and ask a few more questions and just follow up on the question that you've already mentioned in a document. So it's like that. You have certain set of questions that you want to answer, and certain is on the spot and so on. Structured is when you only have a certain set of questions that you're going to be answering, nothing more, nothing less. So every member of your team will ask these questions and only these questions. Unstructured is when you don't know anything about the problem space, you just go in and try and understand it. So that could be, that's not recommended for beginners because it's very open space and you don't know what you're going to be asking. So I would say just have a certain set of questions and then go off topic if you want. And try to ask open question. Open question is do not have leading questions or questions trying to narrow down answer, limiting the person. So for example, okay, I'll ask you all, the ones who are watching, what impact does the product have on your life? This is a question, and I have four answers: positive, very positive, somewhat positive, and not positive. So there's something wrong with this question. I'll put that out there. But can you tell me what's wrong with this question?
You guys can put it on the chat.
Yeah, just put it in the chat. What's wrong with the question? Okay, Sama saying the options are vague. Okay, it's open-ended. What more? Just put it in the chat. There are no right answers yet. Unclear. What's the product? Please repeat, sir. Not okay. So, okay. So it might be possible that you do not know what the options are and what the question is, because that would obviously depend on the questions before that and the product that I'm trying to discuss. But for this particular question, that the thing that I wanted to highlight was that all the options that you see, at least three of the options are positive oriented. That I've already assumed that the impact that the product has on someone is positive, and there's three answers focused on positive. So when a user reads this, it's more likely that they're already inclined towards positive, that it's going to be positive, and that might not be the case. So a better way could be that you have a range of, you have a scale from 1 to 5, from not positive to positive, and that doesn't make it more inclined towards any answers. It's just very open. So that's what you need to keep in mind when you're creating the questions. Another example is this one: how helpful is our app? And I've written very, not so much, okay, not at all. Any guesses why this is wrong? Okay, so my chat screen is stuck and my laptop is also stuck for some reason. I close the chat. Not all option negative answers assume it. So now that I've already told you that the answers are going to be different. I think most of you are looking at the options only. But this time the problem is in the question, because in the question alone, I've already emphasized that our app is helpful. Like I'm already asking that how helpful is our app. I'm not asking how beneficial was, or I'm not asking you to rate the app. I'm just asking how helpful. And by just adding that term helpful, I'm already assuming that the app is helpful to everyone. So that's a leading question again. So a better way could be to ask this question is, if the app did not exist, how would you feel? It's not leading anyone anywhere. It's just an open question, which could be interpreted in any way. It could be very disappointed. The answers could be very disappointed or very satisfied. So that's how you need to keep, whenever you're creating the question, just keep all this in mind. This is just an example. These are some of the friends that some of my friends that I did the project with. And this is an example of you were creating Affinity Maps, which is a way of organizing the data. So you have all the data collected, we put it in sheets and you just combine it all together. The reason for showing this photo is also that during this hackathon, just keeping in mind to take screenshots and photos during your process, because that's something that you will remember. And that's something which will help you whenever you're documenting or showcasing your project. Nobody will actually care about the end product. It's a process leading to that product that will help you along the way. So just keeping that in mind. And another way of organizing Affinity Maps is digitally also, where I've created categories. So these are all the responses that we got from the interviews and questions, and we've just laid it out in categories. We did not have these categories predefined. It's just the data that we got that was answered. We've clubbed them together. And all of this will further help you whenever you're designing your solution. That, okay, these are the categories which are very important, or this is something which was highlighted by everyone, and so on. Another way of categorizing the data is through user personas, which is, so user persona, some designers don't prefer user personas as that much, but I would recommend when you start out, you have at least certain target audience in mind that, okay, these are the people that you'll be catering to. What are their goals? What are their needs? And what's the scenarios that they'll be using your solution? So have that in mind, because it'll help you completely understand the total audience that you're addressing. And you'll be able to come up with the edge cases or different scenarios and different aspects as to how you can cater to a problem. So two I've already mentioned is Affinity Map and user personas. Other methods are user journey, how might we question, and jobs to be done. So user journey is when you add emotion of people in their journey of using an application. How might we is when you have a problem, but instead of writing that problem down, you put it in how might we question, like how might we solve this, how might we do this, and so on. I'll give an example after this. And jobs to be done is just the task that people need to do when they're trying. So let's say if I'm creating a health application, the jobs to be done could be measuring the blood pressure, measuring XYZ, and so on. So that's the jobs or the tasks that people have to do. And so this leads to the second part of the process, which is defining. So once you've researched and you have everything gathered, you know the context, you know everything, you're trying to define and create a problem statement out of it. And there are three ways you can create a problem statement which are directly implementable. First is you answer the following question, like, okay, you have a problem space. Let's say I'm creating something for college students. So answer the 5W question, like what, where, who, which, when. If I've answered 5 Ys, 5 Ws, and 1 H, which is how. So have these 6 questions and just answer them. And you'll have a proper problem statement that you're trying to address. How might we have already discussed, and 5 Ys is, so if you can't figure out a problem statement, let's say I only have college students or school students that I'm addressing, ask yourself 5 Ys again and again. So why am I solving for college students? So you'll get an answer. Then ask yourself why again, and so do that 5 times, and you'll get a problem statement that you want to solve. This is an example, another same from a case study. The new normal. So I've tried to highlight the points that I'm trying to address. So I'm trying to address the new normal. I'm trying to address the social boundaries, the fear, the longer write duration, and inaccessible digital media. So this might not be the best way, but this is a way of showcasing a problem statement. And then there's the step 3 is ideate, which is the fun part, I believe, which is whenever you're going for a hackathon or designathon, this is probably the first step that you'd end up doing. But if you can resist this step until the 3rd step, will really help you. But ideate is essentially that you're coming up with solutions and answers. And a way to structure your answers is through information architecture. Now, you don't need to remember all of these terms. I know it might be a little heavy at this point. But just remember the way of you as to why you want to do this particular phase or why you want to do this particular method. So information architecture is really simple. It's just You're creating an application or a website, let's say, and you just listing down how will the person navigate, not how will the person navigate, but what all will be there for the person to navigate on. So what all screens would you have? How would the person, so let's say if it's an application, there could be 5 possible sections: home, connect, tracker, and so on. So these sections and what will be inside them. So that's it. That's information architecture in very, very general terms. This is probably a more detailed information architecture where I'm going a little more in depth of all the screens that there are and all the possible features that there could be. And another possible information architecture, it's called a vertical information architecture or user flow, is that you have one task. So you have a problem, you have a solution that, okay, this is what I want to build. Now take a scenario that, okay, let's say I'm measuring the blood pressure of a person. So how would I go about solving that problem? How would that user go about solving that problem? And just create a user flow out of it. And that's how you get a clear idea of how your application would also be prioritized. Like, these are the features that I want upfront. These are not so important, and so on. And then this is again, whenever you're brainstorming, this is a screenshot from my college that we did for a session. The question was, how can we get every weekend off work? So just a random question, and everyone just came on the board and put down their ideas. So this is something that you can do on Figma as well, FigJam. If I'm not sure if it was taught in the previous session, but just look it up. And whenever you're creating solutions, just write them down and just fill the whole board. Take screenshot, because like I already mentioned, that's the thing that you'll remember out of this hackathon. Have something to document. And this is another example from one of my projects. On the left hand side, you can see how we listed on the how might we question, like how might we preserve craftsmanship, how might we integrate people about the field, and so on, intrigue people about the field, and so on. So these are the questions that you can ask. And on the right hand side, all the chits that you see, those are the solution or the possible answers that we were going towards. Like, okay, this is possible, this is possible, this is possible. So, and at this point, at this brainstorming point, don't try and limit yourself with the implementation part. Just go wild and think about anything. It could be literally anything. This is another way of showcasing your brainstorming part. Just go crazy, like I already mentioned. Fourth is prototype, which is already done, which you'll already be doing on Figma. And I won't go deeper into that part. But I will tell you one thing. So there are two types of things that I believe whenever you're designing. One is designing vertically, which is you go into details. So like you look at the grid system, you look at the position, the color that you're putting, the typography, the fonts, typeface, and all that stuff. That for me comes under designing vertically, where you're going into the detail part. And designing horizontally is when you don't care about the implementation part, you're just going wild and just putting all your ideas out there, like saturating yourself and just putting all the ideas that you have in this, just going beyond that. So that's designing horizontally. So a few methods that you can do during this hackathon is called Crazy 8. Crazy 8 is you take a piece of sheet, you fold it into 8 parts, and on each part you just, let's say you want to design a screen. What are the 8 possible ways of designing it? And you just give yourself 1 minute to do it. So that's 8 minutes. So 1 minute, design a screen quickly and move on. Don't think how it'll work, how it'll look, or anything like that. Just do it, move on, do it, move on, so on. And that's how you get ideas that even you would not have known if you did not do this exercise. This is wireframes that before you go on Figma and design it, just either on paper, pen, or on iPad or anything, just draw it out on what each button will do, what the layout will be, and etc. And finally, once you've done all of this is like you've done 90% of the hackathon. The 10% remaining is sort of an important part, which is the testing part. You've designed it, you've created it, but will this solution that you've created, will it actually work or not? Because you've talked to users, you've created a solution that works according to you. Now you need to test it with people. So there's this method called guerrilla testing. I'll actually give you the link of this video so that you can watch. For this particular exercise, they go to cafes and talk to people and give them the application so that and just try and observe what they're doing. So this is something that you can do at home if that's what you're designing for, or you can go to multiple websites online and give them the solution, and they'll give you a test back, like how does it work and so on. Or you can just go on Meet, invite your friends and tell them to go through this application, and you just observe them and note down their reaction. So you'll know what things are working and what things are not working. I won't play this video. So last question for you all, which is now that you've seen it, now that you've seen everything, this is something that I mentioned initially. Can you fill in the blank? Design is a dash process. Yeah, iterative. So design is an iterative process, and that's what you need to remember. I've explained it linearly, but it's, at the start you start linearly, but you just keep on going back and forth because that's what design is about. And just to sum it up, these are all the things. You can take a screenshot of this if you want to remember, but I think it's already there on YouTube. This video, so you can watch it again later on. And yeah, and lastly, okay, so all the links that I've mentioned, yeah, it's definitely never ending as well. So all the links that I've mentioned, all the things that you want is there on this website. If you go to, so this website is limited to those who take the course. So you won't be able to access the full content, but you can access all the links, at least the part of it, if you go to deskfly.me/quickbytes. And yeah, that's all from my side. Thank you, everyone. If you have any question, I'll answer them now.
You guys just put in your questions in the chat. People are asking, can you please share the deck?
Okay, I'll do that. I'll share that with Viraj, and then he can put it in the YouTube description link, I guess.
Yeah, I can either put it in the YouTube description link or on Discord, so you guys can check it out.
Yeah,
there.
that also works. Sure.
Good. Someone has asked what software to use to create this presentation.
Believe it or not, it's Google Slides.
Damn. Difference between IA and user flow.
So IA is mostly about the structure, like the application that you have and how would that application look like, what's the structure of your application. User flow is from the user's point of view. If the user is interacting with your application, how would they go through that application of yours? Which screen would they tap, which next screen, and so on. So that's the difference.
People are asking about internships as a beginner. So we'll be having a session about this on Sunday, yeah. I believe. So you guys can join in there. Let's answer this question then only. Do you think 3D modeling helps in UI UX designing?
It can definitely, if you want to upgrade your graphics and have that, if you want to stand out, it's definitely a good skill to have, but it's not a necessary skill that you must have if you want to go into UI UX. Because I'm not, personally, I'm not a good 3D designer. So yeah, it worked out. So yeah.
Yep. How many hours we have to give daily for designing?
That's up to you, like how much dedication do you have and how quickly you want to become a designer. But at least a few hours every day is very important. I think it's about the consistency until you develop that design eye, until you're able to understand design. So yeah.
Tips for foundation students?
Tips for foundation is?
I have no idea. Maybe Sanika, you can elaborate on that. How did you bag an internship at Microsoft?
So my Microsoft internship was through the Microsoft Design Challenge. It was an all-India challenge. And I just, some of the screenshots that you've already seen, I submitted that as a case study, and I was selected as the winner and then the internship.
Yep. Do web developers also need to be good in design?
I think it would depend as to what side of a web developer you're trying to be. If you're working on the front end, then yes. I'm assuming by web developer, that's what you need. But I think if you have a good sense of design as a web developer, and when you're making websites, it'll definitely help you stand out and get good freelancing gigs.
Yep.
Because ultimately, everyone wants a good looking design.
Which software do you use for UI UX designing?
Figma. I also recommend that you use Figma because there's a huge community out there. And the collaboration part is also good in Figma. Even for this hackathon, I would say use Figma instead of XD or Protopie framework.
Yeah, we also had a Figma workshop in the evening at 5 o'clock. So you guys can check it out on YouTube as well. The design lead at Bluelearn took that workshop. Next is, does product design come under this process as well? Does product design come under this process as well?
Okay, so product design is essentially that you're designing a product. Product design is UX design only. And so this process is a part of UX design. Like
Yeah.
product design doesn't come under the process comes under the role which is product design.
Yeah. So about that foundation wala question, Sunny guy said tips for first year students who have just gotten started with designing.
Oh, okay. Just keep designing and keep copying stuff for like very beginning. Yeah. Design flywheel is, so there's this concept that I've come up with. It's called design flywheel. It's nothing great. It's nothing extraordinary. It's very simple. Is that in order to become a designer, you really start off with that first step, which is you start finding inspiration, and then you start copying stuff, and then you start creating it on your own, and then you share it with. That's the flywheel. If you go to that website, desfly.me, you'll see a link, like it's called Her. Or on my Twitter, there's a pinned post. It talks more about the design flywheel. I think you'll get more information there, because
Yeah.
it'll take a lot of time if I talk about it now.
Yeah. What's the average pay of a UX designer?
So it's in many companies is similar to developers as well. So if that's what you're comparing with, I don't think that's a problem.
How to get started with design? I'm just 17 and a complete beginner.
Just go on Twitter, go to my pinned post, and you'll see how to get started in it. That's like the shortest summary you can find.
Yep.
On how to get started with design. That's what I did. That's what I believe. Otherwise, you're obviously free to browse through articles and videos.
Absolutely. Just search for Kshitij Agarwal on Twitter. You'll find him. Super cool account. Just you'll get everything over there. How can I join the hackathon? The registrations are closed. Sadly, we got about 50 teams. So we had to close it down because that is just too much for us to handle. We'll have another designathon soon. So yeah, stick around.
Somebody's asking, when do we have to submit the project for the hackathon, I think.
Oh yeah, I guess it'll be on Sunday. So what will happen is on Sunday, everyone will the judges will judge it, and then about top 10 teams will be selected for the final presentation, and there you'll have to present it in front of everyone. I believe it's in the Notion talk as well. What is the difference between a UX designer and an interaction designer?
There's not a lot of difference. At least I don't think there's a lot of difference. But I think interaction design is more focused towards like the subtle micro animations that you have in an application, or just enhancing that experience part. But UX, it's there as a role for a UX designer as well. But I think that's the only difference. At least that's what I found out. I'm not sure if that's the only difference yet.
Yeah. So yeah, Bhavika just wrote that you have to submit till 2 p.m. and 8th August. So that's on Sunday, 2 p.m. Did you code your website yourself? That is imkshitij.com.
Yes, surprisingly, yes, I did.
Yeah. What is your Twitter handle? It's
I'm Kshitij16, I think. Yes.
Yeah. You guys can also go to the website, at his portfolio website. There you'll find links to all of his socials as well.
Yeah, that's.
I've put the website link in the chat as well. It is imkshitij.com. Will it be good for me if I learn HTML with UX and UI design?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you're asking that if you want to be a UX designer and will the coding part make you stand out, probably not. But if you want to learn and learn both of them, then sure.
Yeah. So do we need to learn coding after UI UX?
No. Like I mentioned, if you want to be a UX designer, go into that design industry, you don't need to don't need to learn coding. There are, in fact, multiple no-code platforms and tools that you can use to create websites or application, anything that you want to do. So there's definitely no emphasis on learning coding. But if you want out of your own interest, then you can definitely go ahead.
Yeah. People are asking for what tech stack you use for your portfolio website.
HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Damn, that's great. What are some of the biggest trends in the UX design industry right now?
So there's definitely 3D illustration, which has been going around in the UI part whenever you're creating applications. There's definitely if you go on multiple websites, you'll find places where you have large text and you have certain when you hover over text, you get images. That sort of a trend is also going on. I think recently, a long time back, I think a new morphism was something which was going on, but now even after new Windows 11 launch, people have started going into that glass morphism field as well. That's another trend that you can explore. Glass morphism is essentially like how your UI looks when you make it look like a glass. I think that's a best way to describe it, but yeah. You can search it up, glass morphism and new morphism. So you don't need a degree to be a designer. One thing I'd like to clarify. I have a BTech degree, so you don't particularly need a degree. But I'm actually not sure if what kind of degree you need to go into that UI UX field. But I can tell you, if you're already in a college and if you don't have a design degree, it's completely okay. There are multiple self-taught designers, and they have been doing very great, really well in their life.
Hey, hi, this is Divyansh, Viraj
Hi.
So, there's this question: which bachelor's degree should I pursue to go into UI UX?
Right, that's what I already mentioned, that I'm not sure which degree you specifically need, like what design degree do you need? Because I haven't been through that process. Because I have a BTech degree, I do have some courses in my college focused on design, and that's what my branch is as well. But eventually it's a BTech degree only, like an engineering degree. So I'm not sure which degree you would need, because I don't think I'm the right person for that. But all I like to say is that you don't need a degree to be a UI UX designer. You can be a self-taught designer. You can learn much more stuff online and on the internet.
Hello, am I audible?
So there's this
Yeah.
question: did you use UI for CSS part of your portfolio, or doing it from scratch?
I didn't understand. Did I use UI for CSS?
Oh, he
So
meant, I
UI
guess,
is
you
user
used
interface.
CSS for your UI. He meant did you use CSS for
Actually,
your
did I
UI?
use yeah. So all the things that I've designed on my website have been through HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So all the UI part, all the stuff that you see has been obviously been through CSS. Best is, I'm not sure what's the best resource. There are multiple resources. Like you can probably find good YouTubers on the internet. Saptarshi, Abhinav Chikara, Puneet Chawla. There are multiple on Twitter. There are multiple on Instagram. You can probably follow multiple Instagram pages. They really have some good content. Yeah.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, I just like electricity went out.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Is Google US certificate? I guess you took that question. Tips for team coordinations and designing.
Oof, team coordination and designing. So personally, whenever I've worked in a team, I haven't done like multiple people are designing one screen. Usually, whenever what I've done is you give certain components or certain parts of the design process, or even certain parts of the designing execution part, to distribute it amongst each team member. So let's say so first of all, you need to sit together and create that library, that system that you want to carry out, so that everyone designs consistently. So that system that you will all have to sit together and do. But once you've defined that and figured that out, just distribute the work of creating that screens and do it accordingly. But what I would also suggest is that not just the execution part, but distribute the work of the design process as well, because design process itself is very large. There are multiple things that are happening. So you can definitely have, for each phase, you can distribute different methods to each person so that you get a variety of content.
Could you please recommend some industry relevant certification courses in this field?
I haven't done any industry level certification. I haven't gotten any certificates for UI UX design. So I'm not sure which ones are the best, but I have heard a lot about the Google UX course, so you can definitely try that out. I think there are a lot of review videos on YouTube as well. So definitely watch those as well before taking the course.
Cool.
Or you can, as
how
Bhavika
do you
mentioned,
get
take my course.
Yeah. How do you get project ideas for learning about this? Like the initial few projects that you make?
So the projects that I've worked for myself have been through either community forums or through the problems that I've faced in my life. So you're supposed to generally just observe yourself and try and figure out what are the problems in your life. And rather than jump into the solution, just try and deep dive deeper into the problem, and then go ahead and maybe talk to other people and see whether it's a problem that many people face, or maybe on similar lines that you find a problem. So that's mostly been my take. But there are, let's say if you want to do short exercises or YouTube videos, then you can definitely check out. I think there's this tool called Designer Size. It gives you certain problem statements that you can address. But those are not for hackathon-based problems. That's more like for your practicing purposes. But maybe you can go through that and you'll get an idea of what sort of problem you need to focus on. Agam, designers are paid
what
well
should
in
we?
India. I think so. There's this. Even though I talked about it in my demo class as well, that in many companies, designers do get paid as much as developers, if that's what you want to compare it with. For numbers, at Microsoft, the internship pay is 80K per month. At Sprinkler, Sprinkler is probably one of the most highest paying, but you get 2 lakhs per month as an internship. Flipkart is also good. I think you get 50K, I think 50 to 60K per month. And Razorpay is also an amazing company. Zeta. So there's this survey on Twitter as well by Zeta, where they asked multiple people what the salary was in design in India. So you can check out that survey. It has all the results. I'm probably more reliable than me because the results that I'm basing it on have been from my friends, the packages that they have gotten. So yeah, do check it out. FamPay is an amazing company, by the way. Yeah, but
Someone asked, what should we be presenting in a case study that we do?
I think I'll talk about that in the Sundays class.
Oh,
because
cool.
The class based on Sunday is mostly about portfolio and internships.
Absolutely.
But do remember, when you're going through this hackathon, keep taking screenshots, keep taking photos, keep documenting that process and write everything down, because when you're creating that case study, you'll need anything or everything that you've figured out. Even if you have like subtly inside jokes that you create during this hackathon, maybe just add those in the case study as well. So completely up to you. Yes, IIIT Delhi College. You don't need to learn HTML CSS.
How much more time do you have?
So if there are more questions, we can probably have it for 5-10 more minutes. Otherwise, we can close the session now.
Yeah. Is that only JavaScript or any other frameworks and library on your website?
Nope, JavaScript.
Yeah.
So my website on the front end might look good, but on the back end, it's really, really messed up because there's a lot of hard code there. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't suggest that's the best way. You could probably use components and use React.js. It's a better framework to work with. So yeah, that's what you should probably go towards. But if you want to start, just learn HTML, CSS. No code tools. The common ones that I know, I mean, you've probably heard of them, Webflow and Wix. That's the ones I know. Squarespace is also one of them. You can, if you want to code, you can probably find templates on the internet. I'm not sure, but you can probably find HTML, CSS templates and then build on top of that.
I guess we've answered all the questions. Should we end it? Yeah, Divyansh, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think we can end the class now.
Yeah.
the
Maybe
session.
also you can also
Yeah.
highlight on some important deliverables they can include in while the process for the designer call, and that will be much easier for them.
Deliverables for the hackathon.
Yeah. Like
Oh,
while
so I
taking.
think, yeah, so most of the stuff that you've written on the Notion document, I think that stuff is still valid. But I would say just uh, because because once you go through this hackathon, you'll have a project. So I would say that you follow that design process and actually do the methods that I already mentioned, or search them up and maybe explore them further if you want to do them. But if you follow those methods, those are something that will make a good case study for you. So all the things, all the design process methods that I've mentioned have something for each of the phases, and each of the not each of the methods, but most of the methods that you think will help you. So for example, when you're trying to find a problem, maybe how might we question, you list down all the how might we question, or the 5 whys that you follow. Just all the things that I've already mentioned, just have them as deliverables. But other things have already been mentioned on the Notion document. List of companies to look forward to apply as an intern. I think there are a lot of companies. I think it completely depends on what you want to do, what sort of company you want to join, and what sort of culture you want to be in. So it completely depends on you as a person, and I can't really say that you should go for this company or this company. I'm not sure what are beginner friendly companies, like companies which hire beginners. But I think that's most of them, because if you have a good portfolio, if you have enough knowledge, I think you'll be able to apply to any company. Local projects. I think you can probably use the Bluelearn a Discord channel for that, like finding project and collaborating with people. If you want, I can share a few links. I know of websites where you can find remote jobs or internship or just freelance for stuff. I'll put that on the quick bite section only. So there's Insta Hype, I think Insta Hype or Insta Hire, that I know that's really helpful. There's Remote OK, if you want to apply globally, because at this point when everyone is working remotely, it's really easy to apply to the companies outside India as well. So those two websites, but otherwise I'll compile it probably. But yeah, freshers with no experience. Okay, so it's completely okay if you don't have any experience. You just have to work on projects, on personal projects, to build your portfolio. That's what I also did before you get experience. So I think because you do need something to showcase. A good way of so a good hack that you can do to achieve both at the same time, like get a company and build your portfolio, is find a company that you want to work on and look and just try, let's go very deep into them, like what, and try and figure out what their problem is. So something that I really wanted to do was go into Spotify. I did not get through, but that's what I wanted to do. So I was thinking in that sense, and so I found these podcasts and I found a problem there and tried to solve it and publish it as a project. The hope was that once I do publish it, and if it is good enough for people, it gets the traction, then it's quite possible. It becomes easier for them to actually approach you and hire you. So it's like one shot, two kills. So you have that as well, and then you have a project for your portfolio, and you get a offer as well. And there's nothing bad in, like, even though I did not get an offer, I was able to connect with multiple people outside India in Spotify, the like program managers or product managers, and I was able to get multiple reviews on that project as well. So that's also helpful. What's the worst project you've ever worked on, ever been on? Oh shit, that's a tough one, and I'm not going to answer that because I'm not even sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think so. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not going to name the company, but there was a project that I worked on that I didn't like a year ago, I think. So yeah, that was probably the worst projects, but I'm not going to name the company or the project. Okay, I think that's it. We can wind
That's
up now.
cool. Yep. Cool. Thanks for coming, Kshitij. Thanks for coming, everyone. Do watch out for the designathon. Do come for Kshitij's session on Sunday. We talk about architecture and design field. Cool.
Thank you everyone for
I'll just
coming.
end the session.
Yep.